Okay, welcome home. I'm your anime manga mom. I have been thinking and thinking about Vinland Saga. I finished it. It was a great, epic show. The two seasons that are out. I have not read the manga. I think I will skip it because I've heard that a lot of it's Vikings, and so they go to a village and they raise it to the ground and they pillage and they do a little essay, and I don't, it was alluded to in the anime, but they didn't really show anything. They got a little racy with Arnheid, but yeah, they didn't really push it past my threshold. Anyway, but I don't want to see more of that. However, maybe it might be worth looking into. It was a really, really great masterpiece of an anime. I really loved the first season. That was the one where Thorfinn was. Well, there's going to be a little bit of spoilers in this, but so Thorfinn is a young Icelandic boy, sneaks off with his dad on a mission. Um, the mission is actually a setup, and a high ranking person, and I don't know how the Viking military works, but high ranking Viking found out about Thor's and that he had, faked his own death and ran off to raise a family because he thought that's what a true man does. A true man, protects his wife, his kids, raises them, teaches them what they need to know. And that's what he wanted to do. He did not want to be a war machine anymore. He had shed enough blood for his lifetime and he wanted to be done with it. Um, so he no longer had allegiance to his leader. He had allegiance to his family. That was what his legacy would be, and that's where he was going to spend his days. Well, he got found out, and some some other Vikings were hired to kill him. And he was ordered to go on a raid, or I don't know. He was ordered to go out and take up his old job, and so he's like, "I will do it for my village, for my family," but he wasn't happy about it. In the ambush, the presence of Thorfinn proved to be a little bit of a distraction, and the better of Thor's was gotten. He was a fantastic fighter, took out all of Askeladd's men without a single uh, death. Did it all by hand. He was really amazing, and he could have killed them all, just single-handedly, right then and there like that. And I wonder if that would have been the better idea, the better option. I think he could have taken Askeladd. He did win the duel, and it was only because he was honorable and didn't kill, and because Askeladd had men hidden that were archers, that Thor's was ultimately taken down. This image was burned into Thorfinn's mind, and he was so enraged, so angry. He was a young child, about 6 years old, but it was such a horrible act. His father, who he respected so much, first time he goes out, his father wins, and this guy just kills him anyway, just with no dignity, no honor, nothing. And for poor Askeladd, I say poor Askeladd, he just, brutally murdered somebody uh, who he had a duel with and who won that duel. And he was just like, nah, off him. It was business. He had to do it. He was hired to kill this guy, so that's what he was going to do. That's for for king and country, right? Um, well, again, Thorfinn, who could have gone home with the rest of the men, um, who were let go because of Thor's win. Um, but no, Thorfinn hid on the boat, stayed with him, and decided that he was going to take his revenge on Askeladd and kill him. But of course, he's 6 years old. How can he do that? And he's running along, behind these horrible Vikings, right? Like horrible in the fact that they're trained killers. They're brutal, and he's just following them along, and they're doing nothing for him. They're not raising him. They're not helping him. Uh, Thorfinn goes very feral, and he has to survive in the wild. Has to. survive around these battles because he wasn't going to let Askeladd get away. He would follow him all over. He would ride in the boat with him. He would become his crewmate, his one of his subordinates in this Viking army. Um, he just lived this very raw existence in a very cruel world of cruel people and conditions. And his every time he went against his father's teachings, his soul died a little bit more. He goes to this English village and gets some help. He's been injured and he's patched up and taken care of, and yet he's the one that signals the Vikings to come and get him. And when he sees the betrayal in the woman's eyes, it breaks him a little bit more until he has no humanity left. He's he's just a vengeful spirit at this time. Um, and his whole life has gone into hating Askeladd. Even though the whole time, Askeladd, he's doing all these despicable things, but he's just got so much charisma that you can't help but like him a little bit. He's there for Thor's in a couple moments when he needed him. At least he doesn't kill him straight off the bat. And they're like, "Hey, what do you want us to do about this brat?" And he's like, leave him alone." You know, he lets him uh, duel, and he doesn't kill him off. Knowing that this kid is going to grow up and uh, want to enact his revenge. I think part of that is because Askeladd hated himself, and he thought if this kid can do it, maybe he deserves to. You know, uh, and so I think he kept Thorfinn around, one because he thought maybe he did have a right to, uh, and two because he saw himself in the boy. Uh, everybody has a tragic backstory. Everyone that you hate has a tragic backstory. They have some reason why they became the way that they came. Everyone has done something that they regret. Everybody has fallen short of their own ideals and the teaching of their parents. What people wanted for the good of them. They have been selfish at times and not strove, strived. They've not reached their goals. And so I think in that we can relate a little bit. Um, ultimately, at the end of season 1, Thorfinn does not get his perfect revenge. He does not get his bloodlust slaked. So he goes into season 2 a completely different man. If you can call him a man, he's still what? 16 years old, somewhere around there, 17. I don't know. I'll have to look up the dates. But he's still a very young man at this time. Uh, but his whole reason for living up to this point was to get revenge for his father. Now he did not get to have that revenge, and everything that he's done to get to that point now haunts him. He realizes that he's forsaken everything that his father taught him throughout his life, everything that he held dear. And he has hurt so many innocent people. For what? No, not even revenge that was given to him. And in the end, he didn't want Askeladd to die. He was the only father he'd known for years. He had shown him mercy a time or two when he needed that. He bound up his wounds and gave him a fair fight. Asked him for more, asked him to improve himself, gave him a reason for living, and now that man is gone. And as much as he hated him, he needed him around. uh, it's the first season was so epic. There's no other word that I could really use to describe it, because it's it was period accurate. Maybe not completely, but pretty much so. I watched another Viking show. I forget on what streaming service, but it would have fallen straight in line with this. It had the same customs and the same attitudes. Uh, so it just seemed very accurate. And then when they go to season 2, it just seems like a whole different show. Um, it was they were sold into slavery. They were bought by this farmer who had a large area of land, so he's very wealthy. He had many slaves, and Thorfinn is one of those slaves, and then a young English boy is one of those slaves as well. A young English boy was a farmer, so he knew how to do it and could do a really, really good job. They had the opportunity to buy back their own freedom, which he had one son that was your typical Viking warmonger, and then he had one son that was a entitled sniveling little brat, and I wanted to wring his neck several times. Uh, just I could barely stand watching it with him talk, and he just spoke so modern. He sounded like he came out of this time with the whiny, entitled, you know, attitude. I just couldn't see somebody of, but I get that you're portraying an attitude and not so much historically accurate representation. And so that attitude would have been prevalent in that era as well. I mean, people are people, and there are stereotypes and archetypes because they fit. And so this guy's one of those. Anyway, season 2 was a lot slower in pace. There were a lot of characters that we had to follow and kind of see where did they have they already come in? Are they coming in later? Why is this person important and their story important to me now? I don't know. And then later on you find out that's why it's important. But for me, I'd rather, learn about them more organically, like through the main character, why they're important. But in this it wasn't it wasn't really feasible at that time. But yeah, there are a lot of characters to follow and a lot of different points of view. So it was just a little jarring after watching the first season. Um, the art style seemed a bit different. Of course, a different studio did it, so it could have been a different art style, different art direction. They did make it dovetail nicely with the first, but it was a completely different story and different timeline, it seemed. Um, Thorfinn has become a pacifist. His previous sins follow him. All of the guilt from what he did and his rise to being worthy of a duel with Askeladd. Um, and every night he wakes up screaming. Um, Most of the time he can't remember what he dreamed, but sometimes he can get bits and pieces of it. The point is that he has all of these lives, all of these souls that weigh on him that he just snuffed out for nothing, for his own gain, for glory and honor and resources. Um, but mostly it was just to gain experience so that he could be a better killing machine, so that he could kill Askeladd. And it all just troubles him because he knew his father was anti-war, anti-violence. Um, it just, he was a 6-year-old kid at the time, and it just hadn't taken root in him yet. And so he becomes a pacifist, just goes along with whatever. When the farmhands come and bully him and eat all his food, he shrugs it off, just keeps going. There are a lot of great speeches in season 2, but I really it because it was not as linear. You weren't following a basic story; you were following many stories that thread into the same story. It was a little bit more. I don't want to say confusing. It wasn't really confusing, but some story threads you're more interested in than others, and so I would get distracted a little more often. And the whole pacifist angle does not strike a chord with me because I'm naturally more of a passive person. I avoid conflict to my own detriment. I should really, learn to stand up for myself more. I should really learn to know when is a good time to, resist authority and that kind of thing. Uh, Life is a balance. And if you go too far one way, it's not healthy. And I'm of the pacifist side. Um, and so when I watch a show and it's like, hey, just be yourself and you will suffer immensely at the hands of the evil and the powerful and the selfish, and but that's all right because that's the right way to be. I'm just like, well, great, this is wonderful. I don't have the burden of so many deaths and wrongs weighing on me. I don't want that. But I'm sure that if something happened and I needed to protect myself or my children, uh, then that is not something that I'm sure it would weigh on me. I'm sure it would. But it would be the lesser of two evils. I would rather take down an attacker than to let my children be injured or killed. I would rather that guilt than the guilt of not doing anything. Um, that's why I love stories like Tokyo Ghoul, because that is me. I'm Kaneki pre-transformation. Uh, I really identified a lot with him, and to tell him, all right, you need to be a pacifist, then he's just gonna fall over and die. Well, what kind of life is that? We only get one. The only name that's gonna be on my headstone is gonna be my own. I am the one that is responsible for my life. So if I just lay down and let the world happen to me, then I will be a doormat and I'll become dust. Anyway, that's why the second season of Vinland Saga does not strike a chord in me. Life has to be balanced. You have to have pacifism. Yes, I think that the world is far too quick to take what it wants, to oppress other people, to react violently, to talk over each other. I get so frustrated watching any shows anymore. And if somebody disagrees with you, you just don't let them talk. You just keep talking over them. You ask them a question over and over and over again. You say a phrase over and over again. I mean, what are you, 8 years old? It bothers me. I hate conflict. So I don't know. That's my problem with Vinland Saga Chapter 2, Season 2. Um, yeah, I do believe that the people need to come and try and find a peaceful solution. People need to be less greedy, less selfish, less violent, less arrogant. So in that, I think it's an honorable position. I think that it was what his father ultimately came to decide. Um, but that's a lot to put on a kid that grew up in a wild, feral, and violent manner. A lot of it has to do with the guilt that he felt. So it's given me a lot to ponder, a lot to sit and think about, and I I'm still thinking. I've watched a couple of reviews and analysis on it to see if maybe there's an angle that I'm just not picking up on. The best analysis videos I've seen on Vinland Saga are by a guy on here named Feeble King. Uh, those were the only two anime reviews I saw, is reviews of season 1 and season 2 of Vinland Saga. Most of his stuff is on gaming. I'm not really a gamer, so I didn't have cause to watch further, uh, but yeah, his analysis of Vinland Saga was terrific. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking out his videos on that if this is a show that you're into. I know that the manga goes on. We're gonna see Thorfinn go on. At the conclusion of Vinland Saga, Thorfinn decides that he wants to be the one to go to Vinland, to take his family, his loved ones, to a place where there will be no slavery and no war. It's an idealistic, wonderful plan, but it's not realistic because there are selfish people, there are violent people, there are only so many resources. People want them, people want more for themselves and less for you. Uh, there are always reasons to divide. Should that stop us from trying to reach out, trying to have a peaceful existence? No, definitely cooperation is the way to go. I think that the people in society are so concerned with what's for them, with what they need. And when you're hurting, when you're struggling, when you don't have enough to meet your needs, then obviously that makes sense. But once you have enough to meet your needs, then it needs to stop going from what do I need and get those fulfilled, but what do I and the rest of society need? I always tell my kids, like, what do you want to do in life? What need can you fill? Because somebody out there needs something, whether that be, a childcare agency or lawn mowing, construction, uh, uh, maybe people need their books taken care of. So there's accountant. I mean, there's whatever interests you, you know. whatever you can do for the world, whatever it needs. Is there something that you think your town, your city, your neighborhood needs? Something that you have a skill to fulfill that need? Then that's what you need to do, because it's about you and your community, you and your family, you and everybody else. So once you have your basic needs taken care of, then you need to look beyond yourself and do a greater good. And that's what Thorfinn is doing. He wants to look beyond himself. He wants to make a good place. And I can understand that, but not to be naive about it, not to, live with no protections. Uh, I don't know. I'm still torn about it. There's a lot warring in me over the ultimate meaning of Vinland Saga. I guess I'll have to wait for the next installment of the anime to see its conclusion, because that might change the lane of the story, my take on it. Anyway, I have watched enough shows about war and violence and everything. I really need to get away from this. So I'm going to go a lighter direction with my next anime. Uh, any comedy or perhaps drama. Not too much drama because, like I said, I'm done with the war. There's enough going on in the media right now, and then I don't want to come home after work and watch more fighting, more violence. Um, yeah. Like I said, I don't usually have a problem with it, but right now I need a little something uplifting. So, if you have something uplifting or something just completely silly, let me know your recommendation. I'm looking forward to it, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day. I'll see you next time. Bye bye. I cannot speak today. I am very, very sorry.